A new docuseries came out on the Gabby Petito case and tragedy, and we're going to talk about the highlights and what I learned from it in today's video. Hello Sofa Squad and welcome back to the sofa. Psh, there's the sofa. Psh, I'm right here. My name is Paul if you're new to the channel. If you're not new to the channel, my name is still Paul. So what we're going to do today is we're going to do one of my little documentary reviews. Specifically, this one is on Gabby Petito. The series American Mdurer did one of their segments or whatever you want to call it, one of their series on her and her case and her story. So what I do, if you're familiar with my channel, you'll know I watch these, I make notes. Now what I've done is I have gotten a little bit more fancy. I usually just hold my phone, but I've got my notes right in front of me, okay? So as I'm talking, I might be like doing this little number right here. I apologize. I'm not trying to look away from you, okay? I'm just reading the notes. So what I want to do is very quickly, for people who might not be familiar with this whatsoever, we are going to just quickly do a quick 60-second overview of it. Now also, I'm going to make this video a fundraiser video. I've done one before, like a while ago in the past, for the Gabby Petito Foundation, but we'll also go ahead and do this one since it's fresh and whatnot, and I think it's a great organization. I've met her parents at CrimeCon. Amazing people, so nice, and what they have done to take this horrifying, senseless tragedy and turn it into something that is helping so many others, it gives me goosebumps, is amazing. So I'll kick it off and all the stuff will be down in the description below. So just check it out if you want to, even just be making yourself aware of it if you don't want to donate or anything like that, but just making yourself aware of what it is and what they do. So that being said, if you're sitting here and you're like, Paul, who is Gabby Petito? We're not sure about this. Let me just give you like a 3-sentence overview of it, okay? So back in, I think, 2021, Gabby Petito, unfortunately, she lost her life. Now, what had happened is Gabby Petito and her then fiance, Brian Laundrie, got in a van. They were going to travel across country and do like a van life vlog type situation. She was going to do her YouTube channel, and Nomadic Static was the name of it. And we'll get to that also later, what ended up coming of that. So along the trip, essentially, she goes disappearing and Brian returns home. We soon find out that she is dead. He disappears. He takes his own life. Now, there was a major manhunt in this, and the entire nation, I would almost say the world, if you will, took notice of this case, okay? And it was just incredibly sad, and there's still a lot of legal drama going on, which we're going to talk about that because they cover some of that in this docuseries. So that's the quick 60-second overview of it. Let's go ahead and just get into my notes that I took and talk about those. So Gabby Petito, American Mdurer, August 12th, 2021 is where they start off with. Now the episode starts with the 911 phone call and the police footage of the infamous call where someone sees Brian slapping Gabby. They call in, and this leads to the police pulling them over. Now Gabby's crying, she's very upset, and she explains to the cops that she had quit her job to travel across the country and start her blog, that she has OCD, and that Brian wouldn't let her in the car, amongst other things, okay? Then it fast forwards to March 19th, 1999, Gabby's birthday. Now her mom is interviewed, and they show old home videos and whatnot. It's sad, but it's nice to see those. Now her mom and Joe stay together until Gabby was about 6 months old. It was an amicable breakup. They're totally cool. Obviously, they're still working together in their daughter's name, right? Now Gabby started drawing artwork as early as preschool, and this is something that I didn't 100% know or remember about her, but they showed the stuff, and it was amazing. She created beautiful pieces. She fit in very well with the art community in high school, her father would say. Former high school friends say that Brian always looked like way older than his age, and it was just an observation. Well, after graduating, Brian kind of flounders for a bit. Then March 2019, Brian gets a townhome. He meets Gabby. They both describe their meeting as basically love at first sight. Gabby's mom says that Brian seems socially awkward. Her dad says Brian looked him in the eyes, seemed like a nice guy. So Gabby decides to move to Florida with Brian. This happens very abruptly. Remember, Gabby's up in New York and Brian's family is down in Florida. So this happens very abruptly. Now, Brian and Gabby move in with his parents, and they will become prominent figures in this case, and still are. Brian's mom, Roberta, was nice at first, but she would make and do things for Gabby. But once everybody's like comfortable, Gabby started getting uncomfortable with her. Roberta seemed to get jealous of her She wasn't as nice anymore. She just started doing odd, like inappropriate things and behaviors in that way. So one night at the dinner table, an example was given, Roberta got mad because like nobody was paying attention to her pie or whatever. And Gabby just felt overall uncomfortable with the vibe. So one day, Roberta also just up and changed Gabby's mailing address back to her New York address without telling her. And these are being relayed like through Gabby's parents and whatnot as we watch the docuseries. Now, a girl who met Gabby through Bumble, and this is like a BFF, Bumble, whatever. It's like where you meet friends and whatnot. She became friends with Gabby. They become fast friends and they're hanging out all the time. And she speaks in the docuseries. She will say that Gabby taught her to see the good things in life and that her life mattered. And I think that's so beautiful because I think Gabby's story, it gives me goosebumps. It's taught so many people these things. And I just think that's beautiful that she's able to live on in that way. Eventually, Brian wants to meet this friend of Gabby's, right? He's like, who are you hanging out with? So they all go to the beach together. Now the friend says it felt very odd. He like hung out in the back and it was like a parent watching them, but she did say that he was nice. However, she even then was like something was dark about him. Something was off. Something wasn't right. Now she says that when she was around Gabby and Brian, they seemed regular, but when she was alone with Gabby, she noticed how manipulative Brian was. She recalls a story about Brian stealing Gabby's ID on a night that they were supposed to go out, and it seemed very icky, okay? So Brian and Gabby get engaged. They go on a camping trip, and this is where they do it and all this, right? And there's this whole story about how he didn't have a ring for her, but like when he was engaging or proposing, a firefly landed on her finger. It all seemed very romantic, and I could see how especially younger people would get lost in these things and whatnot, okay? Now, one odd thing is that Gabby's mom learns of the engagement through Brian's mom's Facebook post. Gabby didn't tell anyone, and then from here on out, Gabby's life and journals are narrated in the docuseries, so somebody's doing that to bring life to it, and I like this aspect of the docuseries. Now, it starts with an entry about them buying the white van. This will be the beginning of the van vlogging trip and this adventure, okay? They're gonna fix it up and do that. So she works to help fund the trip. Gabby works, she hangs out with her friend, and doing all these things, the right things, right? Well, this really upsets Brian. He's very jealous of this. So what does Brian do? He calls Gabby's mom and says that she's hanging out with really bad people and just going down the tubes, right? I mean, come on. So they show these text messages where he goes on and on about crying in a bathroom over her. Literally, he's just super clingy, super needy, super manipulative, and super gaslighty, okay? Now, her friend says that right before they left on the trip, Gabby started to see Brian for who he was, and she started to become more independent. And this is when Brian realized he had to isolate her. Something had to change, right? So he had to get her away from work, had to get away from friends, and so they go ahead and they take off on their trip. You know that this is like the perfect, way to do that, okay? So July 2021, the van life trip begins. Now they will show unedited footage of them making vlogs. Gabby's friend says that Brian didn't like the vlog idea, and she thought it was because he would be exposed. Like, I don't want people to catch a glimpse of this or that or whatever, and I think that's amazing. An amazing insight. Now, watching the footage and whatnot, right? He seems very wooden, okay? And I'm watching it and I'm like, okay, I'm sure that a lot of, girls probably run into this who say they're doing the social media and their husband's just maybe there or whatever, and they're just, the husbands don't really know what to do, right? The girl is more animated and whatnot, and this is how Gabby seems. Like, honestly, when I look at them as a couple, I'm like, oh, please. She had such a light about her that shined that I'm just like, people would probably just naturally gravitate to her over Brian. And this is like outside of the normal realm of, if you like meet like couples a lot of times, let's say a male female couple, and the dude's just quiet and reserved. He's like a typical dude, right? And his wife is the more talkative and social, whatever. Okay, that's like kind of regular, right? This was a different level. I'm just like, Brian just seemed kind of like, And Gabby was so infectious. You can see it through the video, right? I don't even know her, okay? And she just had her smile, her energy. It just was bright. And I can imagine too that someone like Brian would be very jealous of that. Anyways, he comes off as very wooden on film. Like when the camera pans over, hi, and it's just like, okay. It's just so weird and vulgar. Almost like you got a little note that was like, humans say hi and smile right here. And he's like, okay, hi, smiling. You know, it's that vibe, right? They show a photo that was retrieved from Gabby's phone. And on this, she's crying and looks beat up. And it just pulls at your heart. Now, next, we're back to the 911 phone call from Moab, Utah, where someone saw Brian attacking Gabby. Again, we see this infamous police footage of them getting pulled over. Gabby is upset. Brian says she gets worked up, and he's talking to the cops, right? It's like she gets worked up. He was just pushing her away. And Gabby is so scared talking to the cops, and it seems like she's trying to protect him. It seems like her biggest thing is she doesn't want to get left alone where they're at, and it would be safer for her in her mind to be like with Brian, right? So she has to call her mom at one point, and it's so heartbreaking, right? Now the documentary will switch over to Gabby's mom now, and she's like, yeah, you know, I get this phone call, Gabby's upset. They talked about the argument, but ultimately, Gabby downplayed everything. So the cops decide that Gabby is the aggressor in the situation, okay? To the point that if they wanted to, they could have charged her with stuff. And that part, we'll get to that later, okay? So they separate them. They give Gabby the van for the night, and they put Brian up in a hotel room. Now, he didn't have any money, so the hotel room was like a place for DV victims and stuff like that or whatever. So the cops take him there. They say, don't, y'all separate for the evening. Don't do this. Don't do that. Well, they still meet up later that night. So 10 days later, Gabby will text her ex-boyfriend. Okay, now this shuts off, it goes to episode 2. It starts off, we find out the information about the part where Brian flies home to like empty out a storage unit or whatever. Gabby stays at a hotel. She works on the YouTube video. Then we meet Gabby's ex-boyfriend. He speaks. Now they dated a year before Brian. Gabby had talked to him too about doing the van life and all that kind of stuff. So when he's seeing and hearing this, there's this level of like, huh, that could have been me, right? That could have been us. At least my perception of it. Okay, so she reached out to him when Brian was away. She divulges that she has a plan to leave Brian. He says Gabby sounded scared of what Brian would do. Honestly, don't blame her. Gabby's mom describes a text message conversation where Gabby tells her, meaning Gabby tells her mom that she has the van to herself and convinced Brian to go camp in the woods. And her mom asks if she's breaking up with him, and Gabby plays it off kind of like a joke. And she's like, you know, I told Brian that I can make more money as a solo female van lifer, ha 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 type thing. Now, on a side note on that, this whole part right here literally made me feel like I was looking over a cliff. That feeling you get, because obviously knowing what we know now, I'm like, God forbid Brian look on her phone and see these text messages to the ex-boyfriend. God forbid he sees her joking like that. This guy is obviously completely unhinged, and God bless her for realizing it's time to get away. It's time to get away. Oh my God, this case wrecks me. Okay, so let's continue on. A woman comes onto the docuseries, and she's one of the people who picked Brian up, and she's just recounting her story. She picks him up on the side of the road. You know, he has to go back to a campsite area, and this is part's interesting. She was like, when we turned, my Bible slid across the dashboard and landed on his lap. And I was like, aim in on that. So symbolic, right? Now, she drops him off, didn't think much of it. So August 30th, let's go to that date. Gabby's mom gets a weird text from Gabby asking for help with Stan. Stan is the grandpa, okay? She doesn't call him that, she calls him grandpa. Now, the mom explains this away. She's like, maybe Gabby's driving and Brian did the text or whatever. The grandpa's asking her to help him with something. She's like, can you handle this? Well, at this point, we know that wasn't Gabby, that was Brian. Now, Gabby's mom begins obviously the process of she can't get a hold of her. There's no social media activity. She texts Gabby's bio dad, and it's like, I haven't heard from her either. You know, this is like going on 2 weeks. Everyone's worried. So, September 10th, Gabby's mom will reach out to Roberta. Remember, that's Brian's parent, mom. No one responds to her or Gabby's dad. So Brian's family ghosts them, right? So they make a Facebook post. Where's Gabby? Word slowly starts to spread. Gabby's mom contacts the police. Cops start the search, but things don't add up. So remember, this is like happening in multiple places, right? So cops in Florida go to the laundry home and they refuse to talk. They're only like, Brian is here, talk to our attorney. Clearly this is weird. And the cops even like, you know, from parent to parent, don't you want to whatever? No, talk to her attorney. Okay. So the cops talked to another detective who says Brian's sister claimed that Brian told her he and Gabby got in a fight and he left her and fled home. Now, clearly we will learn in this docuseries that the parents knew way more at this point, okay? We'll get into that though. Let's keep going. Now, we see parts where the Florida cops are talking to the New York cops, and the Florida cops are basically like, she's allowed to be missing, right? There's this whole thing of this, and that's a different jurisdiction. So a cop will go back and ask Brian's parents for any information, to put her parents at ease, but they still say no. Then the cops are like, okay, well, the van is actually in Gabby's name, so we're going to tow it. And I'm like, thank God they did that, right? Because this is very weird and very odd. The parents are acting this way, and they learn that Brian's in there when Gabby's thing is here. This could be a stolen car, right? That being said, they're lawyered up, the whole 9 yards, okay? Now, Gabby's mom will recall getting the knock on their door after all this takes place, and is told, Brian is home, Gabby's not with him, the parents are lawyered up. And, Brian as well. And they're like, what? Can you imagine? And they described the gut-wrenching drop in your stomach of what? You wouldn't even know what to do. So her parents hit the pavement searching. The case goes viral. If you follow this, you already know. Detectives break down the investigation now, okay? Protesters take over the laundry's yard. The police body cam footage is released to the public. I mean, all this stuff is flying all over the place. Now, Gabby's mom instantly knows things are worse than she thought with this, okay? Like, clearly, right? She recounts this. Now, September 17th, the tip comes in about Brian's house. The cops go to the house, and the laundries report that Brian is missing. They say they haven't seen him in days. They officially report him missing at this point. Now, cops search the house and find the burn after reading letter. Now, what we're going to do here is we're going to pause for a second because I'm going to read this letter so that you can just take it all in, and we'll go from there. So you'll see on the screen here the letter, and we're just going to read, this part of it over here. That's a key part. And this is from Brian's mother Roberta, to Brian. I just want you to remember I will always love you, and I know you will always love me. You are my boy. Nothing can make me stop loving you. Nothing will or could ever divide us, no matter what we do or where we go or what we say. We will always love each other. If you're in jail, I will bake a cake with a file in it. If you need to dispose of a body, I will show up with a shovel and garbage bags. If you fly to the moon, I will be watching the skies for your re-entry. If you say you hate my guts, I'll get new guts. Remember that love is a verb, not a noun. It is not a thing. It's not words. It is actions. Watch people's actions to know if they love you, not their words. I mean, honestly here, y'all. I mean, imagine that advice to someone like Brian, right? The things he did to Gabby. So that's the main chunk of the letter that I wanted to read there. Let's go back to the notes that I collected. So now at this point, we're on episode 3, the last episode. And again, the search for Gabby explodes. Now, a woman who we talked about earlier who picked up Brian, she sees the social media post and sees this going on, recognizes him instantly, calls the cops. Now there's these other vloggers who unknowingly filmed Brian's van in their footage, right? So when people are putting out all these posts about like, hey, if you were in the park on these dates, and they're trying to find this and that, and it all worked out to where they're like, wait, we were here, that was the van we recorded. So they instantly upload this, and it helps to narrow in the search for Gabby. Now ultimately Gabby's body is found. She was lying on her side, her boots were off, and she's like in a fetal position, and they said that it looked like a pretend fire thing had been made, and it was essentially, the cops were like, it looked like a staged scene, basically, okay? Now, the cause of death would eventually be listed as blunt force trauma and strangulation. Now, the digital timeline police pieced together. While Brian is still in the Spread Creek area, he is texting with his mom. Okay, now this is where Gabby was found, right? So Brian's parents contact an attorney. He's sending texts from Gabby's phone to cover his tracks. He uses Gabby's credit card on his way home. He sells himself money from her account, okay? So he's got this whole thing lined up, right? He's having pretend conversations on the phones. He's using her money, all this. I mean, they go into a very in-depth thing with the digital, footprint of this case, okay? Now, with these crimes that he's committed with, the money and all this kind of stuff and the text and all this, a federal arrest warrant is issued for Brian, but of course he's already missing at this point. Now, 3 days before Brian is reported missing, remember his parents do this, someone reports a car left at a park. It turns out to be the lawn Laundrie's car. Brian told his parents he was going to go hiking and he took a bunch of equipment. Now, the parents believed that he would return. Okay, they were like, this is normal. Apparently they were a very active family like that. So they thought that he would come back. So I'm like, so he's just gone in the midst of all this, protesters, this, that, and the other, and he takes your car and disappears and you're not going to say anything? They 100% knew what they were doing. They were giving him a chance to run. That's all that was. So there's a heavy flood and it floods the park, okay? And it prevents a full-scale search. Now, once the park reopens, Brian's parents will join in the search. So they're willing to go out and help find their son, but not, Gabby, who's going to be their future daughter-in-law, right? So Brian's body and his belongings are eventually found. He took his own life with a gun and he left, a few things. There's a notebook that he had like a waterproof thing, and there's a confession, okay? And it has letters to his family in it, things of this nature. Now, in this confession, in one of the letters, Brian basically makes up a story that Gabby fell, she hurt herself, and basically out of mercy, he ended her life, okay? None of us believe that at all. Now, the documentary will go back over again, like kind of like this timeline or whatever with some of that digital evidence. And so on August 29th, they talk about this flurry of phone calls that Brian makes to his parents, some of them very long. He tells them that Gabby's gone, that he needs a lawyer, okay? So his parents wire money to an attorney and they say stay silent, and they all go silent. So that alone right there tells you how much more the Laundries knew than they were letting on. They'll talk about some of the things that Gabby's parents are now doing. People will talk about Gabby, their friendship with her legacy that she left, and how many people are inspired by her story, how many people decided to leave horrible relationships, things of this nature, right? Now, the Gabby Petito Foundation is launched to help find missing people and aid victims of domestic violence, okay? He's bringing this attention to these other cases that might not get the same media attention. That's another reason why I really like the Gabby Petito Foundation, okay? They do so much for so many different people. Now, they'll also help promote the Senate Bill 117, and this basically requires a law officer to conduct a lethality assessment when responding to a report of domestic violence between intimate partners. And those were the biggest notes that I took from this, so I just want to kind of speak freely now for a minute about some overall thoughts. And like I said at the beginning, Gabby has such an infectious energy. It's spread, here we are, right? The Gabby Petito Foundation. She's inspired all these people. Now, one thing I told you about her vlog, that's what she wanted to do. Her parents said was be this, professional YouTuber and all this. She only had one video. It was that van life video that she did, and I forget how many millions of views it has now. And it's like she got what she wanted in that way, right? And I'm happy for her in that. But I also think that it's amazing that she gained something so much bigger than that, a legacy so much grander than that, because now she's synonymous with all of this help and prevention to avoid this happening for other people, to help people get out of situations like what she was in. And I think one thing for me personally, looking at this case and watching it, was seeing her vulnerability, seeing her fear, seeing how many things went unchecked by other people in the situation. And I'm talking like the cop stop and the Laundries, and how just this girl was just kind of like shoved to the side. And I'm just like, but how did we arrive there? Why wasn't something else done at the stop? And I get that, hindsight is 20/20, right? I get that. But seeing the distress that she was in, and I know that it's like, yes, she admitted that she was like, I did this. But so often in those cases, and I'm not some expert or anything, the person who's the true victim is covering up for the other person. You know what I'm saying? And so I'm like, how did they know she wasn't making that up? Because she clearly, in my mind, when I saw that, I was like, this girl is so afraid. She probably, in her wildest day, didn't think that Brian was capable of this. You know what I'm saying? Like, who would? So my heart breaks for her in that, and her parents for seeing like how close she was to being able to get help. Now, also when you talk about the Laundries, for me, this docuseries laid it out in such a very digestible way to see, oh, wait a second, they 100% knew about this. They absolutely covered up for their son. Honestly, I don't know how they've avoided charges. I really don't. I have no idea how they could immediately turn on Gabby after their son did what he did to her. And we'll never know what Brian told them, right? I'm guessing he basically said something to the degree of, she's gone and missing, I'm gonna get blamed for this. I don't know if he would have said, I took her life, right? But clearly from his mother's letter, he could have, and that probably would have been fine. This is one of the most tragic cases that just rocked the nation. And again, my hat's off to the parents and Gabby's memory and keeping this alive through the helping of other people and hopefully preventing this from happening. So if you are familiar with the case, you're going to want to watch this docuseries. And if you're not familiar with it, then 100% you're going to want to, right? It was very well done in my opinion. Yes, there's a plethora of stuff that it could have gone deeper into and whatnot. But you know, these things that Netflix has this like 3-part series formula they do, right? And so I'm sure there's a lot of people who weren't familiar with this case that now will be, and hopefully will become familiar with the Gabby Petito Foundation. So that's going to be it. I really appreciate you hanging out, listening to me talk about this. Let me know what you think down in the comment section below, and well, while you're down there, if you could, drop some little sofas off for myself, Rosco and Spirit, Bo and Luke, and the rest of the Sofa Squad, so we'll have a place to hang out, sit, talk about this case and all the other cases that we talk about here at the Sofa Squad. And until we meander our way down there to do that, I'll see y'all soon. I just wanted to say thank you again for watching the whole video, and also thank you for being part of the Sofa Squad. Special thanks to all the Patreon members, channel members from both of my channels, everybody who likes, shares, subscribes, comments in the comment sections. It helps the channel out so much. Now don't forget, I do have that other channel, the podcast channel. That's where we go live, we hang out, we talk. We have kind of sort of a schedule, but just be sure and check it out. I'll put it up here on the screen. And then like I said in the beginning of the video, if you want to follow me and Rosco on the Instagram, go on, check it out. It's right here on the screen again. But once again, thank you very much. I really appreciate you being part of the Sofa Squad, and I'll see you in the next video.